have to have cooperation between our teachers, who are doing a great job, and our parents and the board, to know that children are having difficulties, emotional. We all have to realize the stress of today's world. It's so different than when we were in school. The social media, it's pretty uncontrollable. I don't know how parents deal with it or teachers can deal with it. That's the great unknown. But we need to identify the children that is having a problem. As I said before, we can do that in the classroom. If we have smaller classes, then the teacher has more of an ability to work with the children, to observe the child, to see who their friends are, what's happening. You have a chance to really become part of the classroom. The teacher is not just standing there. They're interacting with the children. They're lecturing. And the board has the role, the board needs to provide the guidance to help the situation. And by implementing anti-bullying curriculum in the school, and not just letting it go because of our tragedy of suicide, but to keep bullying a focus of every school and every classroom. It's a necessity in today's world.
Thank you. Ms. Erickson?
I heard a definition of bullying recently that I thought was very compelling. It was very simple. Bullying is purposeful behavior, often aggressive, which is designed to intimidate. And there's a triangle. There's the victim, there's the bully, and then there's the bystander who doesn't do anything. The problem is that many kids are dealing with issues that run deep and are very emotional, and we don't always know what those issues are. I think our schools have a responsibility to have a safe and secure environment. And I think they do a pretty good job with this. The problem is they have one school year and 6.5 hours a day. So while our teachers are very caring and committed, they have a lot on their plate to deal with educationally. And I think it's a lot to ask of them to deal with all the social and emotional learning as well, although that is certainly a critical part of our curriculum that the schools have continued to focus on. I think the question we need to ask ourselves is, as a district and as a community, as parents and as a society, is, are we doing enough for outreach? And I think the answer is we probably need to do more. In fact, we must do more. I support the school psychologists and the social workers who are professionals. If they need more resources, I think we should deploy them. Also, last spring, the board considered and tabled, for the time being, an additional school resource officer at the high school as well as the middle schools. I certainly hope that issue comes up again, and I would support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scheer. What can the board and administration play in children's mental health, student behaviors, including bullying?
Well, I think there's a lot that can be done, and if we look at everything that's gone on this past 12 months, particularly the tragedy in Sandy Hook, which was obviously exposed a tremendous mental health issue, as well as the terrible tragedy that we've had recently here in Greenwich with Bart Pelosi. I think there's a number of actions, but let me talk specifically about what the board can do. The board can focus on the issue. I can tell you that being on the board the last 4 years, we visit these issues, but we don't stay focused on them. And it's been to my great frustration that we visit it and then we move on. The important thing to know as a board member is when the board focuses on an issue, the administration focuses on the issue. So it's very important that the board make this a priority in the next few years. The other thing the board can do is it can model the behavior that it expects in the school system. There have been too many instances, if any of you have attended board meetings this year, where the behavior that we want, almost bullying behavior, has not been exhibited by members of the board to all other members of the board, and it's inappropriate when people are attacking other people. You can debate the idea, you shouldn't be attacking the person. We have to model the behavior. We also have to fully continue to staff all of our mental health services. There have been some people who have called into question whether we should cut psychologists and others. I don't believe that's the right path. The last part is we should have appointed an independent board to examine what's going on, particularly with Bart Pelosi's case.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Applebaum?
Over 10 years of experience in the Greenwich Public Schools, and during that time, I know for a fact that social and emotional learning has been a core piece of the curriculum. It has constantly been evolved, and it needs to continue to evolve. We need to carefully look at it and make sure that it is still meeting the needs of today's technologically driven world. Our students are not in school a great deal of the time, but the behavior that comes from outside the school is entering it. We may have to ask some very tough questions about when and where and how do we control what happens outside of our school buildings, given that it impacts us inside. I know the curriculum exists and the district needs to continue to support it. Our vision of the graduate outlines what we want our students to be able to achieve when they get out into the workforce, working with a diverse community, being empathetic, soft skills, and maybe it's time to start identifying ways to measure those so that equal importance is placed on them as it is the academic rigors. Bullying is a national epidemic. It is not confined to schools, it is not confined to children. It is, unfortunately, something is taking over even adults. Children model adults. I think we need to all look at our own personal behavior and have that reflected in the schools.
Thank you, Mr. Baldunas.
If you go back to the first question that was asked this evening, what is the role of the board? I answered, it sets policy. Policy on bullying should be very, very clear. There should be zero tolerance for bullying. The board says that, if the board agrees that, and the board, as Mr. Scher said, pushes that to the administration, that's going to get their attention. They're going to work with their teachers, their staff, their administrators in order to ensure that any incident of bullying is reported and dealt with. If we talk about school safety, which also impacts the mental health of our students, it's a similar path. We need to understand what we can do, what should be done, and within the economics of the situation, what can be afforded to make our schools as safe as possible. The board in the past has dealt with this issue. There are more recommendations coming out from the state as to what should be done for schools, and I would be encouraged, or I will be part of, making sure that those items are implemented. We need to also support the current social emotional programs that are in place. If those are not adequate, they need to be changed or augmented with things that will work.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein.
Unfortunately, sometimes even from themselves. We do deploy school psychologists and social workers, but we can certainly promote better coordination among our resources. I understand our policies and procedures are under review now, and I agree with Brian on zero tolerance. Certainly this has attention. We just need to make sure that doesn't go away. We also need to make sure our teachers are trained in terms of issue spotting and that they're comfortable raising concerns to an appropriate channel. We also need to make sure our students are in a position to help and know who to go to, and that message can't be repeated enough. We need to make sure that all issues are raised, even if they don't seem serious at the time, and we need to keep tabs on them. At the end of the day, as a community, we have a responsibility to have a safe and secure environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much.